I think that as a marketer, all of us have this temptation to include more than one CTA because you know that all of these different goals matter. But when I started to look at the data, uh, that was really interesting because I was noticing, especially what was happening after people opened the emails.
Welcome to Confessions of a Mad Marketer. This is the show where we stop pretending that we've got it all figured out and we actually talk about what goes wrong in marketing. Because the truth is, what we learn doesn't usually come from every time we nailed it and it went right the first time. It comes from the stuff that we tried and didn't work. I'm Ben LeDonni, and today I'm joined by Amanda Ciccarelli, the Senior Manager of Events and Webinar Marketing. Amanda, thank you very much for being here. And more importantly, thank you in advance for being willing to confess.
Absolutely. Thanks, Fawn. It's great to be here today.
Great. Well, why don't you tell everybody that's listening or watching what it is that you do and how you got here?
Absolutely. So I'm the Senior Manager of Event and Webinar Marketing at BNP Media. Been at BNP Media for about 6 years. In my current role, I manage our team of live event and webinar marketers, and we market a whole portfolio of events that the BNP brands produce.
And Amanda and I work very closely together. So we have some stories I'm sure we could share. But this is all about that one story that you can tell everybody where you thought you had it figured out. You were about to embark on a marketing journey and you thought you knew exactly what needed to happen, but you ended up being wrong. So why don't you tell us what your confession is, where you thought you knew about something and you thought you were going to nail it the first time, but it didn't go exactly as you planned?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one thing that I've been really rethinking recently is how much we try to accomplish within a single email or an email campaign, even. So, an example I have to share is that we had a few post event email campaigns recently where we were trying to really capitalize on event engagement, like immediately post event. So, we were trying to promote future events, we were trying to promote subscriptions, and in some cases, multiple subscriptions. Essentially, we were trying to get like the most that we possibly could out of one single touch point. So some of this pressure was external because obviously different teams naturally want visibility for their own projects and their own goals. But a lot of it was internal pressure that I was putting on myself. I think that as a marketer, all of us have this temptation to include more than one CTA because you know that all of these different goals matter. But when I started to look at the data, that was really interesting because I was noticing, especially what was happening after people opened the emails. I was realizing that the behavior I was seeing wasn't super healthy. The more crowded the emails were that we were sending, the weaker the click to open rate was and the higher unsubscribes we were getting. So, what really stood out to me also was that the highest unsubscribe behavior actually came from the people who registered for and actually attended our live and in-person events. You would think that these people are our warmest audience, but they were unsubscribing at a higher rate than those that didn't actually show up to the event. So, my comparison example, around the same time, we had a simpler, more focused email campaign that was going out that was tied to a new event launch. That performed much more cleanly than these other post event emails did. The engagement was much higher. The ratio of clicks compared to the number of unsubscribes was like way higher than we saw with these post event emails. So it's not a perfect apples to apples comparison, obviously, but it was enough to make me step back and like rethink that approach with our post event emails. So the lesson for me in all of this and the confession is that I think that marketers sometimes mistake maximizing opportunities for maximizing effectiveness. Trying to fit everything into one message can actually dilute the outcome that you care the most about. So now when I do these campaigns, I think much more intentionally about being disciplined in having one primary goal and one CTA that we're promoting per campaign.
Wow, that's a good one. Okay, so you said something about the click to unsubscribe was the data that you used to tell you that one performed better than another. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I looked at quite a bit of data. For this specific instance, I think that the click to open rate is a more effective comparison tool than the click to delivered, which is often kind of what we look at in these cases. But we want to know what's happening after someone opens the email in this case. After they open the email, are they showing good engagement behavior, like clicking on links, CTAs, or are they clicking that opt out button at the bottom of the email? So, what we saw in the example of the post event emails, where we tried to promote multiple things, we tried to promote like the following year's event, we tried to promote a sister brand event, and we tried to promote subscriptions for the brand. We saw that there was a lower ratio of actual engagement, so clicks on those main call to actions, compared to the number of people that decided to unsubscribe completely from receiving those emails. Comparatively, in the emails I mentioned that were much cleaner, much more focused on a single call to action, we saw that people were not unsubscribing at nearly as high of a rate on those emails as they did with the ones that were packed full of call to actions.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So it seems like if it's more overwhelming, they just decide that they're going to ditch.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you hinted at it. It sounds like now you're going to always make sure that there is one call to action in every email that you send. Is that like a hard and fast rule? Where you're like, if somebody comes to me and says I need to put all this information in email, you're absolutely like, no way, we're not doing it. We need one call to action per email. Or are there exceptions to that?
Well, I never like to live in the black and white. So my answer to that is actually A/B test, right? Like we have A/B testing functionality when we send out emails. So if someone for some reason feels super strongly that they need to promote more than one single call to action in an email, my response to them would be A/B test it. See for yourself what happens. Ultimately, we want to make decisions that are data driven and based on the actual performance metrics that we're seeing. And so I think it's really important in every scenario to let the data lead you. So not a hard and fast rule necessarily, but this is, I think, much more where we'll see better performance at the end of the day.
Great. So, digging a little bit deeper here, do you see that any call to actions, like if we ask them to do this versus we ask them to do this, perform better or worse? And I think about that. I know you said you're in event marketing and webinar marketing, and call to actions between those two could be very different. You're asking somebody to come register to come to a live event. There's a lot more friction there versus sign up for a webinar. And then in a post webinar or even post live event, I'm assuming your call to action there might be totally different. So do you see any differences there in terms of what you're asking the person to do from the email?
Absolutely. And what's really interesting is the example I gave that performed the best in this scenario. So the clean, single, focused CTA, that was a very low friction ask. It was just sign up to continue receiving emails, totally free. It's like just a couple clicks and you're done with it, essentially. Versus, the example we had where the emails did not perform well, the CTA that we put at the top of the email was kind of the lowest friction uh, outcome, which was subscribe for our brand newsletters for free. But then we also included, as you said, like call to actions to register for the following year's event. So there's a lot more decision making, obviously, that goes into that. I assumed when I originally put these emails together that the lowest friction CTAs would perform the best, and I think that that hypothesis was validated by what we ended up seeing from our different email campaigns.
Great. Yeah. So, I bet, because I know in terms of the marketing that you do for events, you do more than just email marketing, right? There's a whole bunch of tactics. And so How do you, when you learn something like this, ensure that the entire team and all of the new marketing that we do here at BNP Media, how do you make sure that everybody's learning from what we just learned and that that's consistent across all the things that we do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'm the manager of the webinar and event marketing team. So I see a really big part of my role as helping the whole team to understand what's going on across the entire team and the entire portfolio of events, not just staying in their own bubble, staying in their own world. So I have a few different ways that I use to make sure that we are sharing knowledge across the team. One is that I make a point to share these findings and learnings in our Monday morning meetings that we have on our team. That's really important. I also personally use our Slack channels to communicate these type of like wins, and other people on my team are also really good about sharing their wins when they learn something interesting in their various marketing campaigns. It doesn't have to just be email. It's like you said, there's so many tactics that we use. So those are a couple, ways that we make sure that we're sharing knowledge. We have a whole host of different ways that we disseminate information across our team and to the broader team. We have a knowledge hub at our company that we, can use and employ to share information and findings like across the broader ecosystem. We have a learning hub within our own internal team that we use to store results, performance reports, documentation. So a big part of it is making sure that we're not working, a single person isn't working in isolation.
That's great. And so I'm assuming, that's stuff that you learned from trying it, but there's this whole host of other places where people are already, they already know some of the best practices. So what are your favorite places to follow, or where does your team pull from some of the outside experiences that they can learn from?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's actually funny that you bring this up because I felt that this was a really important thing for our team to, as part of our like knowledge sharing across our team, that we also are not just talking to each other, but we're like hearing from external sources about what works and doesn't work in marketing. So I did actually create a whole hub of external resources and podcasts, webinars, live event links, all of these different various sources that like teach marketing. So few of my favorites. I mean, gosh, there's so many, but Eventastic and their whole Guru Media Hub ecosystem is a great source of information. They're constantly sharing, especially like related to email marketing, what works and doesn't work. And so, that myself and many of my team members follow them pretty closely. Couple other podcasts that I like include the Marketing Against the Grain
Love that.
podcast.
Oh,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah. So I make a point to make sure that when something new comes out too, that we're letting our team know, like, hey, if you haven't heard, this is a really useful podcast, give it a listen. I also really like newsletters. I'm a newsletter person, so I love subscribing to quick marketing newsletters that are highly valuable. I'm a reader, so sometimes that just works a little bit better for me than listening to a podcast or watching a webinar.
Great. Yeah, great advice. All right, cool. So last question. You're a leader here at the company, and I know you lead a pretty large team of marketers. I'm sure there are people listening to this that are just about to embark on their career or get into marketing. This newer generation coming into marketing right now, what piece of advice would you give them so that they set themselves up best for success going into marketing?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, obviously, my takeaway from my confession, I think, is really important. You can't uh, succumb to the pressure that you put on yourself to market a million different things in a single place. That is a temptation that's very real that I think even really seasoned marketers can fall into often. So don't mistake maximizing effectiveness for like maximizing an opportunity. It's there, you want to be effective at the end of the day. And sometimes the best way to do that is to keep it simple, keep it focused. The other piece of advice I would give is to let the data lead you. I love data. I am always making decisions based on data and encouraging my team to do the same. And that's how we really build up our knowledge across the team. That's how we can more effectively share lessons with each other. And so if you don't have a system in place already for making sure that you're following up on the performance of your marketing, you need to do that to be successful and to be able to pivot and make decisions differently, potentially in the future.
That's great, Amanda. Thank you very much. Very sound advice. So we talked about a lot here on this episode of Confessions of a Mad Marketer podcast. We talked about how you don't want to overload your emails with a ton of content and make sure you focus on some of the most important or only the most important thing to say there, as well as let data drive the discussion and make sure that you are looking at the data on an ongoing basis to make really big decisions. We also talked a lot about the cross-pollination across teams and how to make sure that you learn something and you have others be able to learn it from you to be able to apply it in their marketing efforts. So thank you very much, Amanda, for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.